One of the many highlights of the week on Pompey Sound, the voice and wit and wisdom of Dan Shaw. Are you well, Dan?
Hi, Tommy. Yeah, very well, thank you. Sun's shining, so I've got a smile on my face.
Let's get right into it because the world wants to know, what did Dan Shaw make of the season that's just ended?
I loved it, Tommy. I absolutely loved it from start to finish. It's such a cliche thing to say, but it really was a roller coaster this season. But just the beginning, just to be back in the Championship and to be introduced to it by Leeds United away from home, everything, even that game, it ended up kind of summing up our season, that first game. To be back in a big stadium with 40,000 people there, both sets of fans giving it plenty, really high level, high pace football. Pompey going behind and going in front, and then looking like they'd won it at the end, and then looking like they'd lose it at the end. It was just so up and down, and that's kind of how the season went. And obviously, I'd said it, hadn't I, all season. All that counted was finishing above that dotted line. It's all that mattered. So, I took the rough with the smooth. Obviously, we went, I think it was the first 6 games without a win. Played well in some of those games, but couldn't get it over the line. And then, had certain individuals who didn't look as though they were good enough for the level, who over time built themselves up, their confidence up and their performances up, like Ogilvie, for instance, and settled in really, really well. And yeah, we just had all these swings. I remember us all looking forward to playing Stoke City, of course. That was the easy game. That was the banker, wasn't it? Yeah. A cold Tuesday night at Stoke.
You're right. You're right.
Getting absolutely battered, and then I think after that game, everyone feared the worst, didn't they? It's that we're not gonna stay up. It was over for a lot of people. A good mate of mine who I commentate with from time to time, Dan Parkinson, he was every week we're going down. He just completely lost all the confidence. But I just kind of saw it as, you take it one game at a time, and I knew that the squad was always going to be, it was going to be tough because you'd come out of a lot of League One players, and just sprinkled a few additions here and there. There wasn't a great deal of budget, so it was always going to be difficult. But I mean, they found that home form, didn't they? It was so important. Got that first win away at QPR as well. I think going into January, they knew that there wasn't quite enough there, and that they had to bring in a few players, make a few tweaks. I think they believed, they being Massinho and co, believed that if they'd stuck with what they had, then it probably was going to end in a bottom 3 finish. But they just made enough signings to get them over the line. And of course, Colby Bishop coming back in was absolutely huge for us. I think, to be quite honest, without Colby coming back, I think we would have gone down this season. So a lot of people weren't actually that worried about Colby going when he had his surgery, him not being around. A lot of people saying that Yengi was actually the answer. He was going to be the man to fire in all the goals, and I think now people have had a season to look back. They'll realise just how important Colby Bishop is, and we've had a lot of conversations over the years. I remember us having a round table last season about Bishop's reaction to fans after he got a bit of criticism and then scoring. I think those people who've had those impressions and opinions of Colby at the end of this season will say, do you know what? That guy is absolutely integral to Portsmouth Football Club. He is a Championship player. He is a Championship goal scorer. And he's massive for us going forward as well, because a player like that is so hard to find, and would be very, very hard to replace. So he's been huge. I think that little spell where we got 3 wins on the bounce at Fratton was massive as well. I think the crowd really were lifted by that. The team was lifted by that. I think we were 10 points clear with 10 games to go at that point, and everyone felt it was job done. And then of course we started to slide a little bit, but all of the sides below us were all winning games and really putting the pressure on us, and it was very nervy again. But we managed to get it over the line. So, you know, there's been so many games where we've been close and not quite made it, but then again we've had games that we've played so well, games that we've not played. So it was typical of how I thought it would be. To finish where we did was fantastic. To do it with 2 games to spare was really fantastic. You know, to go to Fratton Park on the final day of the season. Without having to worry about the results, particularly when it was against Hull, because for a little while I was starting to think I can see Kamara coming, scoring and sending us down at one point. It just almost seemed like the story was written. But to go to Hull against them on the final day at Fratton, as I say, was fantastic. The only thing that ruined my day, Tommy, was sitting in the press box to commentate, looking to my right hand side and seeing Francis Benali up there with me in the same row. I made sure he realised I wasn't very appreciative of it. So, yeah, he got a few stares from me, and he knew exactly what I was thinking.
What were you thinking? Dan, if I may say so, that is a superlative summation of the season that's just gone. So thank you very much indeed for that. There is a $64,000 question which I don't think can be answered, or at least it can be answered in a complex way, and that is, how did we turn it round? Yes, we brought some players in. Yes, Colby Bishop came back, and that gave us a boost. I suppose I'm fishing for the possibility that this manager really knows what he's doing psychologically.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the manager has got a massive part to play in that, and I'd said it last season as well. I mean, I don't think we actually had the best squad in League One last year, but what we had was a real togetherness. You know, a mindset that was positive. I felt as though it was almost, I don't want to say going into battle soldier-like, because that's probably over the top, but there was a resilience about Pompey. There was a determination, and there was a closeness and togetherness. And when you go 6 games in the start of the season without a win, then you get beat like you did against Stoke. That's where John Mousinho is then judged the most, because he'd had it all go his way really for the whole tenure that he'd had at that moment, at that point. And it's difficult sometimes to judge a manager when it's all going right, even though of course he's the reason it's all going right. It's when things go wrong, when things are bad, that you really find out what a man is made of in that dugout. And it's even the recruitment. Now, we're not entirely sure that Mousinho signs all of his players, because Rich Hughes and the like are all behind the scenes. But there's a lot for me about character in this team. The people that they bring in, they don't want big time Charlies and prima donnas. They have an awareness that, yeah, they've got the lowest budget, and these players aren't the top earners in the division, and all the rest of it, but that's not going to deter them or detract them or make them feel as though they can't go out and beat anyone on their day. So to be able to galvanise a side like that and give your squad that belief, be able to keep everyone together, keep people happy who aren't on the bench or aren't in the first 11, and keep that squad to say, look, you've all got a big part to play here, and you're going to have to play it when it comes. And I think he's done that so well, John Mousinho. I honestly just don't think there's a single thing that I could look at Mousinho and go, I don't like that, or I think he can do that better. I think he's just working at 100% all of the time. This is how crazy it is, Tom. Right, when you're talking about John Mousinho. If I have to give you an example of something that I didn't like Mousinho doing, or I felt he got that wrong, it was a post-match interview away at Oxford last season. That's it. A moment in an interview. Nothing else. Formations, tactics, transfer, anything. I just can't fault the man. So he's been absolutely fantastic. And of course, Mousinho, and he's a assistant, John Harley and Zesh and all the other guys who work beyond the scenes have all done a fantastic job, and I can't speak highly enough of them, Tom, really.
Yeah, what's interesting is that we know that there was no chance of him going to West Brom, despite all the talk and rumours. We know that, don't we? Because he said he's staying. And we now know that John Mousinho is as good as his word. And when he says he's staying, and he does have a medium-term plan, it's clear, along with the owners and Andy as well, the CEO. So we can be comfortable about that, I think. But let's look at this coming summer. I'd love to get your thoughts on him saying that there are going to be some new faces, plenty of new faces. Maybe not the 14 or so that we brought in last summer, but there are going to be a lot of faces. What's he going to be saying to, for example, the strikers that they may be are certainly talking to some strikers, because we all know that Colby Bishop is going to need somebody else alongside him or to stand in for him if he gets injured, perish the thought, or suspended or something. He somehow got to say to that striker, you won't start, because nobody can take the number 9 shirt off Colby Bishop when he's fit. So there's a serious man management problem right there, isn't it? Come and join us, but you will be warming the bench at best.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing is that Colby Bishop, I think he finished on 11 goals for the season. And anyone ahead of him is in the top 10. And none of them all of those players, you're talking about between 15 and 50 grand a week. So you're going to have to try and find someone who you think can come in and score as many goals, sit on the bench, not be paid as much money as the top scorers in the division. So where the hell he's going to find that guy from, I do not know. And I mean, I think it's going to be that Pompey are going to have to start casting that net out far and wide, scouting wise. I don't think there's going to be a player that they bring in from the Championship.
Australia again.
Well, possibly. Maybe Europe. I mean, obviously they signed Sorensen, didn't they, at the start of the season? They felt that maybe he would do the job. They took a look at him and decided that he wasn't good enough after paying the transfer fee. So, but at least now they can look at that, look at the level that they thought Sorensen was at, and be able to kind of judge him almost by the other players they're looking at, because they now know the levels across Europe where maybe they would fit in England. So that's a really tough one for them. There's not one single name that's on the tip of my tongue as a striker who could come in. And the Yengi one's interesting because obviously he's been released. It just hasn't worked this season, has it? He's obviously put his country before anything else this year, and I don't really blame him for that, because we would expect any Englishman, given the chance, that he'll want to play for his country, and so we shouldn't judge Australia any other way, or Australian players any other way. If they want to play for their country, then we should absolutely support that. But it has been to the detriment of his career at Portsmouth, really. And he is one that obviously Pompey just felt it wasn't worth the gamble keeping him for another year. Perhaps as well they didn't quite like maybe his attitude and approach. I don't know. I'm just saying that out loud without knowing any facts. There were rumours that he was trying to find a way out of the club at the end of last season because he felt that he could find bigger and better, and then that didn't materialise, and that might have left a bit of taste. Again, I don't know that that's a fact, but that was quite a strong rumour that was going around at the time. So maybe there's just been a little bit of a change in Kusini Yengi on a personal level, and maybe that attitude, if that is the case, doesn't quite tie in with that attitude I was just talking about earlier on, that everyone's together and there's a real mindset of you got to dig deep and work hard, and perhaps he doesn't fit that mould anymore. But he could potentially go to League One, become the top scorer in League One, and then be an established Championship striker in the coming seasons, and we might then say we've let that one slip. But Pompey have looked at it and gone, clearly they don't think that's going to be the case, and they've let him go. So finding that backup striker now is a really difficult thing. But I'll tell you what, if they sign someone to replace Colby Bishop and put Colby on the bench, then they really have found someone. If they can find someone, as backup to Colby who's just as good, then that would be a big coup for us.
Sometimes we forget that it was Danny Cowley who brought Colby to Pompey, if I remember correctly. So feather in his cap for that one, I think. I'm just going on memory here. I might have that wrong, in which case I apologise in advance for complaints. When we hire well, we really hire well. Look at our goalkeeper. And what about Freddie Potts?
Yeah, I mean, Schmidt has done really well. I expected him to be the first team keeper when he came in, and I did also kind of think that Norris would get a little run, but I was always expecting in the end that Schmidt would come in. He's done fantastically. I think he's made, from my recollection, he's made 2 mistakes as a keeper in all that time, which is absolutely fine.
That's all right, because he's got 2 assists to his name. So
well, there you go. So he's cancelled them out. So yeah, I mean, look, any keeper's going to make a mistake. Doesn't matter what level you are. So I'm not holding that against him by any stretch. But he was a really good signing. Not a lot of money involved in that one either. And Freddie Potts, I mean, unbelievable player, really. I don't quite agree that he's going to go and sit in West Ham's team next season and be a starter or be in and around it. I think he's going to end up back out on loan somewhere next season.
Really?
So I wouldn't.
Why not us
give
then?
it up. Well, maybe they're going to try and look to give him to, maybe a Leeds United back in, teams up in the Premier
But we're
League.
attractive. He can live at home with his dad and come around the M25 for training.
Yeah, well, that's
home again. That's
nice.
That's important.
It's nice, but what the aim of the game is for West Ham United and for Freddie Potts at this point is to continue to develop. They because West Ham want him to be a big player for them. They want him to be in their first team, and if they don't want that, then they want a player they can maximise in terms of transfer fees. So they've got to keep pushing Freddie Potts on. They know that he can play for Portsmouth Football Club at that level now. That's a fact. What they need to know now is can he play, in a championship title push, or can he possibly play in the Premier League? Is someone willing to take him and play maybe Burnley, teams like that? They've got to just keep trying to, etch away at Potts, see where as far as he can go, and go from there. So Pompey now, although it would be a wonderful move for us, it would be too easy of a move for Freddie Potts, I think, and wouldn't really benefit West Ham unless they don't get any offers in from bigger and higher level teams, and that will potentially help to push Freddie Potts on in his career and help West Ham with their development of the player.
Okay. Got to get your thoughts on Josh as well, because he said out loud that he wants to stay. He is staying. He's also said out loud that he knows how he can improve. These are good things to hear, aren't they?
Well, I can't wait to see the new and improved Josh Murphy. That would be fantastic. Yeah, I think he's 30 now. So Josh Murphy at the end of this season really would have to say, right, this is the time now where I say I want to try and move on to a bigger club. And I'm sure there would be takers. Or at 30 with young children and a family in my first season, am I happy where I am, and do I think that there's room for potential within the club and to help it on its way in my last few years, before that final contract. So I think it's a good decision for him. I think it's the right place for him, and definitely for us as supporters, it's great news, because he's been absolutely integral to everything we've done. His stats have been absolutely out of this world. I think he's played 42 league games this season, Josh Murphy. So he's been involved in almost every game. 7 goals, 14 assists. You just can't whack it, can you? I mean, to come in from Oxford, he looked a decent player at Oxford, and obviously he did. He had an unbelievable game in the playoff final at Wembley for Oxford as well. But in some respects, he was a bit of a gamble, which is probably why Pompey signed him, and none of the other sides in the Championship, in and around mid-table or whatever, took the gamble. So he's a good signing for us, and really pleased that he's going to be out. I'd be surprised if that does change, to be honest. So I'm very happy about that.
Until recently, in reporting, in journalism, you were allowed to put a person's age after their name. So it would be George Clooney, 64, comma. And football is the last surviving place where you can do that because it's legitimate. So it's legitimate to say, that the Aussie boy is 19, but it's also legitimate to say that Matt Ritchie will be 36 in September. Because it's a factor, isn't it? Isn't it?
It's certainly a factor. It's certainly a factor for Ritchie, isn't it? Because it means something. It means he's coming towards the end.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably get one more season out of him. And then I think he'll probably look to hang his boots up. There was really strong rumours at the beginning of last season. I don't know if you remember, Tom, but I was screaming from the rooftops, why isn't Ritchie getting in the team?
You were. You're absolutely right. That's a fair comment. You did say.
I couldn't understand it. I just felt as though
He's
seen
Premier League, isn't he?
Well, I mean, look, he's always been at a good level, and I'd just seen when he'd come on, just those little. I mean, there was sometimes he put in a few crosses that looked like bad crosses, but they looked like bad crosses because the people who were supposed to be in the box reading it weren't doing that. So it looks like he's crossing to nobody, but his crosses were superb, and I thought, he's still got it, Ritchie, for sure. I don't understand why he's not playing. And of course, eventually he got in. But the really strong rumour at the time was that he was told, look, you are going to be a first team player here. And then that didn't happen for quite some time. And then he was beginning to wonder if perhaps it was time for him to maybe call time on his career early. And possibly go into being a football agent. I'm glad to say that obviously Pompey slowly worked him into that first team, and he's been a really crucial part. Even that housing, we'll call it, in one of the games at Fratton at the end of the season, where we ran the clock. I think it was about 10 or 11 minutes of stoppage time, and he just single-handedly ran the clock down all by himself.
Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that brilliant?
Oh, it was just
coaching Sadie and being a human brick wall.
It just goes to show, that you just can't beat experience and know-how. And the best players can still play when they lose a bit, a yard of pace, i.e. a Paul Merson, for instance, because they've just got that extra bit in the brain that is able to overcome the loss of power in the legs or loss of pace in the legs. And Ritchie's shown... I mean, to be fair, he still gets around, doesn't he? He chases everything down, works hard.
It's quite theatrical, isn't it? When he runs from one side of the pitch to the other at full pelt.
Yeah. There's just that doggedness, that desire, that passion, isn't there? And it's either in you or it's not that as a footballer. Some players don't want to be doing those hard yards at the end of their careers. But Matt Ritchie wants to, and he probably wants to do it more so because he's in a blue shirt, But he's been another one who's really helped us get us over the line this season. So good signing.
The other rumour about him is, and I don't think this is giving anything away, is that he's bought up half the New Forest and he's going to be a farmer. And you know that if he does that, he'll throw himself into that just the same way as he's thrown himself into his football. And he will be up at 4 o'clock in the morning feeding those chickens himself. Because he's just that sort of a bloke. And we wish him well. I hope we get another season out of him.
Yeah.
There are stories going around that if it doesn't quite work out, he will be allowed to do what he wants to do. Yeah. And he may not be starting, just as last season. He may not be starting. But he's a valuable player to be able to bring on at the right moment in a game that warrants it, isn't he? Yeah. Marlon Pack.
Marlon Pack, well, I mean, the first thing I'd say about Marlon is he's had a lot of critics this year, which in my eyes is totally out of order, because he was the same person who won every single Player of the Year award in the season before in the summer, and was an enormous part of us getting promotion. It meant everything to him. We know he came back to Fratton Park because he wanted to play for Portsmouth. I'm certain there would have been bigger and better offers in terms of financial packages for him to go elsewhere. So look, he's the same. He's getting to an age where it's trickier, it's harder, and he'd had to step up another level again. He's gone back up to the Championship with another year in his legs. So it was always going to be difficult for Marlon Pack, and he's been asked at times a lot of times to play at centre half when he's never been a centre half ever. And has got on with it. Now, yeah, of course he's been caught out a few times because sometimes, if you've got a player like Marlon Pack at centre-back, when he got sent off at Sunderland, you've got so much space in behind. If you're lifting a ball over the top and then the striker spins you, and you're closer to 40 and 30, then inevitably you're going to be caught a little bit short. So, of course there's going to be times, but Marlon Pack will always give everything, even if he hasn't had the best game because he's starting to get to that age where it's creeping up on him, he'll still die for the shirt. And so you've just got to appreciate the fact that none of us, unfortunately, are young forever. And it looks as though the sun is beginning to set on Marlon Pack, as it is with Matt Ritchie, but we can only thank them for being here at the club and doing what they've done, particularly this season, and wish them well when the time comes, which I'm sure isn't far away.
It's great to have a few local lads in the team, isn't it? I look at the lineups of some sides in the Championship and, there just aren't any local lads. And it's really important. And you make some good points about Marlon Pack, but it just occurs to me from what you're saying that at this moment in time, our first pick in midfield is a bloke who, when he came to us as a QPR reject, suffered howls of derision. And yet, look what Andre Dozzell has turned into.
Yeah, well, that again is just another reason why I've been saying all season, don't take anything immediately so much to heart. Results, player performances. You're gonna have to rough it out and ride it out and see what happens. Now, listen, the not abuse. I don't think anyone abused Dozzell, but people were saying he's not good enough, right? And if you're saying that based on what you've seen in the first couple of months, you're 100% right, because he didn't look like he was good enough. But you have to stick with it, because a season doesn't happen over 1 or 2 months. If he's played the whole season, he's not good enough. Then you can say it, but you've got to give these players time. And Dozzell was a free transfer from Queen's Park Rangers. That does not, does not make you sit up and feel any great deal of excitement at the time that signing's made. But you sit here a season on, after a year's worth of football and watching what he's done, and you go, wow, he's been brilliant. Now I hope that continues and that he remains at that level. I imagine he must have worked very hard to be as good as he has been. But if he continues to play like he has, then we've got a really good centre midfielder in there. And he, again, a lot of players have had to, start the season not quite there. Some of them didn't quite make it, like Sammy Silvera, for instance, who never really did what we hoped he would, or what Pompey hoped he would. So you do get them, but he deserves a lot of credit and a lot of praise for the way that he's performed this season, Dozzell. And he's had to prove himself, to everybody, to the manager, to the fans, and maybe even to himself, because he probably left Queen's Park Rangers, looked at that team and thought, God, you don't want me there. Portsmouth from League One want me now. Like, am I on the slide there? And he's probably had to pull his own level up and prove to himself that he is good enough. So, yeah, congratulations to him. Fair play to him. And I'm glad that he's another one that's going to be in Pompey's first team next season.
Yeah, there are some recruitment people who really know what they're doing, and I suspect it's a teamwork job. But we have found some players that nobody else would have found, and we have brought them on, which is brilliant. Even if they're 28, 29, 30 years of age, 36 years of age, we seem to have brought them on. So there's some good work going on behind the scenes at Pompey. Yeah,
I mean, I've said this before, but everybody, there's so many unsung heroes. I'd love to know who exactly is in there and doing what, how they're doing it. I remember you saying about that website that offers kind of what was it, player names and statistics and whatnot, that's just kind of like an online scouting network. But how they go about bringing these players in and what they look at, how they judge it, and it'd be really interesting. I don't think Pompey would ever tell us, because that's kind of partly a reason why they're so successful. I don't want anyone else to know. But it would be fascinating to actually get behind the scenes and look at the run-ins and the operations of that side of things, because we know that money's tight at Pompey. We're never going to go just splashing out on proven players as such. We kind of do have to dip into the unknown a little bit. So finding a strategy that works in terms of bringing those players in and getting the best out of them would be something that I would really enjoy looking at. Although Michael Eisner's talking about doing one of those fly on the wall documentaries, so maybe we'll see a little bit more than we ever have done off the back.
Well, he's
of
getting
that.
back into his comfort zone when it comes to making programming, because that's where he made his money. He came, as a head of Paramount and then head of Disney. He turned Disney round. He came up with Aladdin and all those sorts of cartoon animations that made Disney a big player again. So he knows, he's got his finger on the pulse when it comes to film and TV. And if anybody connected with any football club in the world can make that work, he can for Pompey. So fingers crossed on that one. And staying with the future, you're always very brave when it comes to making predictions. What are your hopes and your predictions, because they can be two separate things, for the coming season?
Well, I hope we win the league, but that's certainly not my prediction.
Okay. It's all on tape, be careful.
Yeah, it's no more than a hope. When you asked me the other week, John Mousinho's going to sit down at the end of the season. He's going to have to come back and explain to people, yes, we are going to go for the top 6 this year, but trying to manage expectations at the same time. And I said to you, I don't think he will do that. I think he'll try and say it's going to be a little bit of the same, keep our heads above water, try and maybe get a few extra results away from home, but stay tight and keep Fratton a fortress. And I think he did pretty much come out and say that. So my expectations kind of run alongside John Mousinho's, which is just strengthen slightly, just try and be a little bit more comfortable. It's a bit boring, really, but maybe be safe with 6 games to go. And just have a nice looking team, plays us some nice football, gives us some really good moments next season. Maybe gives us that little cup run, and it's just about progress, because it's actually you haven't done it necessarily when you stay up the first season. You've really done it when you've stayed up in the second or the third season. Yeah, and that's been shown time and time again. Yeah. So it's another season of the fans going to have to get right behind everyone. They're going to have to just ease up a little bit on the expectations. Don't get too down when we have those bad moments, because we will have months where we won't win games. We will have games where we get beat when we didn't think we would, and we will probably have those odd games where we get hit for 5. But just stay the course. Stick with it. Try and keep that core of good players that we've got together. Add to it bit by bit, and just slowly try and creep up that league. Kind of stay under the radar a little bit. And just try and enjoy it without having to worry about relegation too much. And of course, most important of all is don't lose to them.
Well, I was going to say, we're going up the road and they're coming here. Have you been to, how many of these matches have you been to, and what's been your experience?
Oh, I've been to loads. Well, I remember Yakubu's goal in the first time we beat him at Fratton Park, that 1-0. Back in the day, it was on a Sunday, and back when I was 18 and around that age, the nightclubs were still absolutely packed on a Sunday. So we'd been out celebrating all afternoon into the evening, and then I walked into the toilet and Yakubu was there. So we had a bit of a hug in the gents. He was being mobbed throughout the nightclub.
Wow.
I remember, of course, beating them when Harry Redknapp came back as their manager. Lua
Ooh,
Lua,
that one.
ripping them to shreds. And I was there for the 4-1 win at their place in the FA Cup. Quincy Owusu-Abayi coming on out of nowhere and having the game of his life. Didn't see much of him after that, but he's a bit of a legend for that. And then obviously the David Norris 2-2 I was at St Mary's for. Unbelievable. I mean, people forget, but David Norris scored the goal of the season in that game. But the second best goal of the season in that game was scored by Chris Maguire,
Right.
who played against us for Oxford and Sunderland, and he scored an absolute screamer in that game for the first goal, and it never gets remembered because of the Norris goal. But that game, I think, from when we started celebrating that Norris equaliser to when I'd finished, I was about 7 rows in front of where I was standing, because everyone was celebrating so much it actually lifted you out of your seat. I turned around and my mate was about 10 yards away from me. It was crazy. And Joel Ward had scored at Fratton Park in the home game in that one as well, in the Fratton end. And my mate Ben Lloyd, who I sit next to, who was there at that game as well, the Norris game, he wears glasses, and I punched his glasses off of his face in both of those games. So Lloydie will be with me for both the games again this coming season, so I hope he wears his contact lenses.
Yeah, how do you do the transport? I made the mistake once of the train, and I got lost on my way between the stadium and the station because I left 10 minutes early because I'm a coward. and by the time I got to the station, I was the last one to arrive. And I had to act like a neutral, like you do, to get through and get your ticket punched and everything. How do you travel? Car or
Get
or
your
train?
ticket punched and nothing else.
And nothing else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would take the train given the opportunity this season. I do quite like being in that, in that melee of people, because it's such an intense thing. And it is a very Pompey thing. I mean, people who aren't born and raised in Portsmouth, who support Pompey, don't quite... I'm not saying don't support the club as much, because of course they do, but they don't get that feeling of being Portsmouthian. No. If you are born and raised and you live in these streets of Portsmouth like I do, there's such a feeling, like Alan Ball described it, people went to war for in this city, and there is that mentality and we want to be together, because that is the closest thing in football terms to being in the trenches alongside your own. You want to be in that mix, you want to show strength and a togetherness, and so I like being in that. It gets, of course, it gets a little bit heated, and you got to check yourself a little bit at times. But I like to be in that mix on a match day against them. I'm not sure if they'll let us do it. I remember the last time in the league we played them, they put us on buses. You had to be in what they call the bubble. So there may not be an option for the train. We may have to all meet at Fratton Park and get bussed in, like last time, if that's what the officers of the law want to do. But given the option, I'll take the train, Tom.
I could talk to you all day, Dan, and luckily we don't have a budget at Pompey Sound, because if I had to pay you, we couldn't afford you.
Very kind.
No, so just one last thing then. This won't be the last time I'll ask you this, but do you want to give me a prediction for where we finish in the coming season? Now,
oh my goodness.
I know, terrible question, but I've asked it.
This season's really hard, Tom, because you've got Birmingham and Wrexham coming up. So you're talking about two teams who you don't expect really to be anywhere near the relegation zone this season. Right. Which makes it very tough, and it means we have to keep a very close eye on the playoff final that's coming up, which I think is Charlton and Wickham. I guess really, as much as I do enjoy an away day to London, we want Wickham, really, from our point of view. I think I talked about it being difficult in your second season. I think Oxford United will find that tough. So I think they will find themselves down there. I don't think Hull City are going to come too far away. They're a mad club, because they they finished in the playoffs or one place outside the playoffs the season before. But the chairman wants instant success all the time, and he keeps changing his managers. He's obviously just released Sellers from his job, who would have finished 14th based on his tenure. Preston, I think, are going to be another team that struggle again. I think Stoke are going to struggle again. Queen's Park Rangers. So
I can hear a man thinking on his feet here.
Well, I'm
going to make a note of it, so don't think you can escape it.
No, well, I think Sheffield Wednesday and Swansea, although Swansea finished 11th this season, Sheffield Wednesday 12th. I just wonder if they're going to slide a little bit as well. So I would think that 16th place again is about
16th.
Right for us. Yeah.
I somehow was able to, in my mind, predict that you might say 16th. So let's hope that both of us are right.
And that's no failure, Tom. That's absolutely no failure.
No,
I'll
not
be
at all.
Really pleased with it. And again, the only thing that would be nice is if we can just be, spend some of the time in mid-table, perhaps, not be in the bottom three.
Not spend too much time worrying about
that.
relegation. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Dan. Thank you. Take care. Talk soon.
Thank you, Tom. Cheers, mate.